Even though it's the case that we just had a presidential election not even a year ago, we're already forced to think about the next presidential election because there's an ongoing silent primary process that is occurring before a single voter has even had the chance to cast their vote. Now, I'm talking about a meeting where American oligarchs convened to hand select the Democratic Party's next presidential nominee. So before I tell you who they decided to select, we'll talk about who voters are currently thinking about with respect to the 2020 election. So according to a survey of 836 registered voters conducted by Public Policy Polling, when you match up Donald Trump with Democratic candidates, Joe Biden beats Trump by a 15-point margin, with only 7% of voters claiming that they're not sure who they'd vote for. Bernie Sanders beats Trump by a 13-point margin, with 9% of voters not sure. And when it comes to other potential Democratic presidential contenders in 2020, Elizabeth Warren also beats Trump by 7 points, with 9% unsure. Cory Booker beats Trump by 5 points, with 15% of voters saying they're unsure. Kamala Harris beats Trump by 1 point, with 19% of voters saying that they're unsure. And when you match up Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg with Donald Trump, they tie, with 20% of voters being unsure. Now, absent from this list are people like Kirsten Gillibrand and Tim Kaine, individuals who could very well be running for president in 2020, but the overall takeaway from this poll is that currently Donald Trump is in really bad shape. Now, we don't know what's going to happen between now and 2020. There's a lot that could change, but overall, the main takeaway is that Donald Trump is in bad shape, and there are two individuals that have a very good chance of beating him: Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. But when it comes to people like Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and Mark Zuckerberg, and to a lesser extent Elizabeth Warren, voters are less sure about these particular candidates, but they're more sure about people like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. So if the goal truly is to defeat Donald Trump, you'd think that the Democratic establishment would opt for either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, but the party's donors have made their decision, and it is not Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. So during this silent primary that occurred, American oligarchs decided that they want Kamala Harris to be the Democratic Party's next nominee. So The Hill reports that Democratic donors are buzzing about Kamala Harris, saying that the Democratic donor class is abuzz about Kamala Harris after the freshman California senator was feted this weekend at an event in the Hamptons surrounded by top fundraisers. The Bridgehampton event, where Harris mingled with top donors and supporters of Hillary Clinton, was the ultimate signal that Harris is thinking much bigger than the Senate, one top bundler said. They see the former prosecutor turned California Attorney General as embodying the qualities a Democratic presidential candidate would need to win the White House in 2020. Since November, Harris has become one of her party's biggest draws. She has raised upwards of $600,000 for Senate candidates in recent months, and she recently raised $227,000 in an email from MoveOn.org, according to sources close to Harris. Kamala has come to embody what's next for our party, said Ben LaBolt, a Democratic strategist and former spokesman for former President Barack Obama. She's no Barack Obama. She doesn't give speeches like Obama, and she doesn't fundraise like Obama, said one Democratic fundraiser. But that's not the way she's looking at it. In this political climate, she's saying, if not me, then who? So at this swanky event in the Hamptons, all of the American oligarchs that tend to back Democratic Party candidates, as well as the consultants and Democratic strategists, all got together. None of us were invited, but they decided, look, the person who will be the next Democratic nominee is going to be Kamala Harris. Now, if the goal really is to defeat Donald Trump, if they truly dislike Donald Trump like they purport, then that seems like an odd choice when you consider the poll that I talked about. So going back to that poll I cited, Kamala Harris only beats Trump by 1 point, with 19% of voters currently remaining unsure about her. Now, to be fair, this doesn't necessarily mean that she's a terrible candidate, but the main problem with Kamala Harris at this point in time is that we don't know much of anything about her with respect to policy. We do know that when she was the Attorney General of California, that she decided to not prosecute Steve Mnuchin, whose bank literally violated foreclosure violations in 2013, and of course he went on to become the Treasury Secretary of the White House. Now, what we also know about Kamala Harris is that she has a super PAC, and some of her largest donors include Time Warner and Comcast, companies who are currently rallying against net neutrality. We also know that her record on the death penalty is complicated because while she chose not to pursue the death penalty against a cop killer, she also chose not to allow the death penalty to be challenged legally. Also, when she had the opportunity to endorse a true progressive, she didn't. She was one of Hillary Clinton's loudest cheerleaders and endorsed her back in August of 2015. But when it comes to almost everything else about Kamala Harris, we don't know very much. And this is because she is still only a freshman senator that hasn't had the chance to really build up her resume. But we do know one really important thing about Kamala Harris that, to me, tells me everything that I need to know about Kamala Harris. She's willing to sell out. She met with the largest donors to the Democratic Party at this swanky event in the Hamptons, and she sold her soul to them. Why else would they be a buzz unless she promised them everything they wanted? It's because she sold out, so we may not know much about her policies, but we do know that her policies will be more friendly towards large multinational corporations because she is willing to get friendly with them, and they are very excited about Kamala Harris. They found their new puppet. So, if you honestly are trying to push Kamala Harris and shove her down our throats like you did Hillary Clinton, that's going to be a problem. If you truly care about defeating Donald Trump, that will be a problem. One, because we don't know much about her. Yes, the polls showed that she doesn't do very well against Donald Trump compared to Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but that may change. But I mean, if you're honestly thinking that progressives are going to accept this bought-off puppet, think again, because that's not going to happen. And if you really want to defeat Donald Trump, which you should want to, because we have a Supreme Court that will permanently flip, or not permanently, but certainly for decades, flip to conservatives if he wins a second term, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not getting any younger. And Donald Trump may have the opportunity to replace her, which would be devastating. So here's an idea to all of the American oligarchs and Democratic Party elites who thinks that they can single-handedly select the next Democratic Party nominee before any of us has even had the chance to cast our votes. If you honestly think that your candidate is going to have the advantage, you're horribly mistaken, because the fact that you now endorsed Kamala Harris, it tells us that she's a corporate sellout, and that exponentially disadvantages her because Americans are against the establishment. So why would they back a candidate that is already getting in bed with the establishment before she announced her intentions to run in 2020. I mean, that makes no sense. The American voter is so fed up with the American establishment, the political establishment, I mean, this includes both parties, that they voted for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. So if you honestly think that they're going to get on board with Kamala Harris, it's not going to happen. So here's the thing. If Kamala Harris really wants to run, here's what she needs to do right now. She needs to renounce all of these large American oligarchs that are trying to buy her off, and she needs to raise her money exclusively via grassroots. Otherwise, she's not going to have a chance, and her poll numbers won't improve, because you have to win over progressives if you want to be the next president and you want to defeat Donald Trump. Winning over progressives entails you not selling out.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.